Good evening, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you are in the known world, and welcome to another episode of The Crown Between Two Roses. Tonight, myself and Duchess Engelin are so privileged to be joined by Sir Lankin and Mistress Fenissa. Welcome, you guys.
Hello.
Hi, good to be here.
Awesome. So I'll just kick off with our acknowledgement. Good nobles, we come here together in a spirit of fellowship, deepening of our skills, sharing of our knowledge, and a shared interest in the search to find truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Engelin, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather. We recognise their continuing connection to land and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. So welcome, guys. So this episode is all about our second gen members, and you guys have some pretty illustrious paths. So we'll get each of you to give us a little introduction. Normally we ask, how did you find the SCA? How did you get started? This time's a little bit different. So maybe give us a little bit of background of who you are, who your parents are, and when all of that story. So Fenissa, should we start with you?
Sure. So I joined with my mum and my brother in 1990. I think mum took us to a May Day demo in Frio, and mum's always been interested in like a history buff and everything like that. Was an avid reader. And really the rest was history. She really delved into it. And as a child, it was awesome. You know, there was, knights, and it was fantasy. It was fantastic. So my mum's Mistress Ludwina de Castile and von Valkenburg. So she's in Dragons Bay, Western Australia. But yeah, so I think I was about 5-6 years old when we started, and yeah, mum just jumped 2 feet into it, and I loved it. I think as a teenager I probably had a little bit of a hiatus, going, this sucks, I don't like it anymore. I think that lasted a year, and then I was back. So yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Lankin?
Well, I guess as if it was ever optional. So I was born into it. I came in from birth. So my mum and dad. My dad was one of the founders. My mum was one of the very, very early combatants and SCA people. He was the second Baron. She was the third Baroness, technically, of Rowaney. And I've been in it since birth. I have spent a lot of my adult life regional at the moment, but I have only missed one festival in my life. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
That's very impressive.
Obviously, you came into it fairly young, both being super young second gen kids. What would you say? What was the moment that really got you hooked? Or was there one particular thing that drew you into owning your gameplay in the SCA as individuals rather than just as, children to your parents?
I suppose for me it was, I don't know, when I started to contribute. So even though I was always the kid, and it was very hard growing up in Yala at times to be seen not just as Ludwina's daughter, but as soon as I was able to contribute and, become, so I think I was a teenager, and I started doing combat archery, and I started training in heavy, and at some stage when I turned 18 I was constab. So that those moments where I could do it myself, I could contribute something, and help with stewards and everything like that. And I think I got my AOA when I was, 15, 16 from Boris and Constance. And that, I think it was around then that I really went, this is cool. I love this.
It got you invested, or you got yourself invested.
Yeah, definitely.
How about you, Lankin?
Hard to say any one particular point. Obviously, I was in it since childhood. I mean, I got my AOA, I think, at 12 from Alpha. But I still haven't registered my device. But no, I don't really think there's been any one particular point. People probably started taking me a lot more seriously in my heavy combat when I was about 4 years in, hitting like 20 years old. So probably once I mostly hit my mature adult growth. But yeah, I wouldn't say there was any particular moment that locked me in and made me feel dedicated. It was always the plan to fight heavy and fight well. Yeah.
Do you feel like, because you've spent so much of your life in the SCA, do you feel like it is part of who you are? Like if you're out and about away from an event or practice, is it something that's deep in your core? Lankin?
Lankin, you can go. You go first for this one.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I could talk about it for hours or succinctly sum it up usually. Yes, I mean, in general, it's definitely a core thing. Yeah, as a teenager, I never had that like lapse period, but I know that a lot of the second gens kind of did have like a year off or something. Yeah.
To rebel. It's our moment to rebel. Yours is still coming, Lankin.
Maybe it is.
No, I suppose the SCA's family, in a way. It's you know, you might not always get along with your family, but they're always there. It's always there. Even if you have to go away for whatever reason, there's always something to come back. It's always there to come back to. So, you know, mundane life gets in the way, kids get in the way, kind of mostly, but it's always there. So it's like family.
I'd be remiss if we didn't. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask, do you have any funny or naughty childhood stories at events? Did you have a faux pas, trip over somebody wearing a coronet?
Run around naked?
No. I was a shy kid.
Before you were in your 20s, Miss. Before.
Thanks, Engelin. Good job, yeah. I'm just trying to think. There's lots of stories, but trying to think of some from before I was 20. Lankin, do you have any? Well, I have a think.
Yeah, I got a couple I could probably rattle off. I remember at what would have been the first festival site. I remember getting interviewed by someone who had a news crew there or something, and me and Robert Hunt, BJ, had stolen apples. I remember telling them that we'd stolen apples. Otherwise, I remember being about 14, and it was a really, really hot feast that I was at. Like it was like middle of summer, and I remember me and my brother and another young SCA person under 16. We were all drinking from this like big bowl of orange juice, but it was actually orange juice and white wine, and we didn't know. But so many things. I mean, there were probably several festivals where I wandered off for the entire day, like past the boundaries of festival. We once got lost. Someone almost stepped on a snake. There was another one when we came back with a stray German Shepherd that belonged to the farm owner. But yeah, there's be a fair few under the age of 20, I suppose.
Under the age of 20, I think I was a good kid. I was a shy kid. I remember things like when Eadward and Yolande were princes. I think they had just been coronated. Coronation was in Inyala, and we had a kids scavenger hunt, and I remember going up to Eadward, who I had a huge crush on. There you go, I admit it. He had his beautiful long hair, and we had to go up to His Highness at the time and ask for a token. And by the time I got up to him, he'd run out of tokens. and I don't know if he suggested it or if I suggested it. I'm going to go with me because that makes it a little bit funnier. I asked if I could borrow him for a moment and take him to go say he's my token. And from then I was in love with him and Yolande. They were just excellent because that same event, Yolande came and hid from people with my friends and we were just playing, and she decided to come and hide with us so she didn't have to talk to a few people. And being short of stature, I think she blended in quite well.
That's adorable.
I'm going to use this opportunity to share some photos of each of you guys when you were little. Let me just bring it up. And if you can talk us through it. Oh, hang on. Start with you, Nis. You tell us about your fond memories.
I don't remember where that one was. I know it's very early on, like probably one of our first events, because it's probably Lonagarb. And that's Fremantle Art Centre, and it had the most beautiful trees, and it was just excellent to grab a stick and go shove leaves on it. It was just, don't need TVs, kid, just get a stick and leaves. But yeah, I know Sir Nathan Blacktower likes to send this photo to me probably every 5 to 10 years and remind me.
Cute.
Again, this is just Mum and I had an event, I think, again, at Fremantle Art Centre. And, yeah, I don't even remember what event, but I felt, because it was like a silken kind of underdress, and I felt pretty.
I got to say, I'm a big fan of the floral headwear as well. So.
That was excellent. Probably an Engelin feast, and that was probably one of the first dresses that Mum made for me. So I felt, yeah, it was excellent.
Cute.
I don't remember much about them, but I just remember what I wore. That's terrible.
I don't know. I think there's such magic about dressing up when you're a kid that like those memories going to stick in pretty hard.
Mum's wearing a denim. There you go. That's my Pelican ceremony. So I was also 20-something weeks pregnant at the time as well. So that will make a nice story for Patrick when he's older.
At his peerage ceremony.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. What was that?
Is he in fealty by proxy then? He's swearing for two.
Yeah, sure. Swearing for two. Yeah, I like that.
All right. Lankin, you're up.
I mean, obviously, this is before I can remember. So obviously that's me running around wearing my dad's torse over my neck. I mean, I was having fun when you told me to send a photo of like me and my family. I was like, I'll just find the youngest ones possible. Yeah. So you can see my mum was a heavy fighter back then too. I mean, now she's a mod, but I think she was doing all right back then in that day. I think she got to the silver sword back then.
Nice.
Awesome.
Aww.
And that's me probably even slightly younger. It's probably 1994 or something, or 1993. Actually, no, it's probably younger than that. I know kids' age is better now. Probably like 1992.
Super cute.
And this would be. I mean, this is so my brother. My brother's the other person in the photo, and there's my dad. This would be, I think it'd be 2018, the year I was asked to join the Knights.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a good photo.
So does your brother play as well, or just came for the occasion?
No, James. We as a family, we all played for most of my childhood. My mum and my brother James had a break, probably for 6 or so years. Well, probably was longer than that. And so my brother has only really come back in the last 3 or 4 years, more casually. He just comes for the fighting and festival, effectively.
Fair.
I think it might be the last photo of Dad in garb before he passed away, I think.
That's special.
It's a very lovely photo, for sure. And this one.
Yeah, and that was snapped that definitely was at the festival where I was asked to be a knight, and that was snapped after fighter auction. I was walking off. I think
Such a nice photo.
first. Yeah, so it is a good photo. Yeah, and I was in a pretty good mood.
Fair enough too. Awesome. So, was the idea of peerage aspirational for you guys because you're following the footsteps of your parents, or is it something that just came along because of what you were doing and interested in anyway?
Do you want to go first, Vanessa? Or
I'll go first if you want. I suppose it's always yes and no. I felt very lucky to be surrounded by very service orientated people. So my pelican, Mistress Mirren, and you've got Nathan Blacktower, Catherine, just so many service orientated people. And I suppose for me, Mum had ingrained, not intentionally, that kind of mentality, because Mum had always been involved in something, especially with me. So if that was dancing, if that was, school stuff, whatever it was, she was always, 2 feet in, participating, helping out. So definitely it was an amazing moment for Mum to be held. But there's just so many other bits to draw on to go, this would be amazing. These people inspire me. I want to do more. I want to be like them.
I think for me, it's a bit of both. Obviously, Dad was knighted way before I was a little bit before I was born, even. So, I've always really liked, uniforms and regalia and all that kind of stuff. So, most things I end up in hobby-wise, I'm going to want to get to that high position. And I really, really enjoy SEA heavy combat. Always have. My dad used to say it was the most fun you could have with clothes on, and I agree. So I was always going to aim for that level at fighting. I think like every knight, or every heavy fighter, even once you've hit white belt, you've got another level of aspiration after it. Yeah.
I think I wanted to be a knight first, actually.
There's still time.
There is always time, but I think I wanted to be a knight first. So, oh well, I'll get that later.
While we're on that note, I have to say, from my experience, possibly the scariest thing I've ever had to do was give Lankin his buffet, because of course his mother, Mistress Lindori, I could see her and she looked very concerned, and then it made me concerned, and that's probably why I hit you in the ear, because I was very worried. So do you feel like your experience growing up in the FCA has given you a different view of the society from most folks?
I don't know. I suppose yes, because we've seen it through child's eyes. So there's always this magic connected to it. Like we've seen, when you hold an office, you can see the ugly side of things too. But I suppose yeah, we've seen the magical side of it through kids' eyes. Yeah. What about you, Lankin?
Oh, well, I mean, we've been saturated by the magic of the SCA, I suppose, in terms of the background level of courtesy and honor that it has in it, setting up people's tents or helping them with stuff. And then I guess also we've been around for a long time, so we kind of know who's who and why they are, or interesting details about lots of the notables of Lockhart. So
So you're saying we have a lot of gossip?
we do sometimes. Others, I mean, yeah, I know some random casual gossip from things back in the 90s that I wouldn't think were important or interesting, but I've dropped them in the wrong conversation. They are. Yeah.
So the shine hasn't worn off as you've become adults?
No.
That's awesome.
I love explaining that to people, trying to explain, it's more than just fun and good times and camping, but it's just elevated. There are magical moments like the Boar's Head Tavern with certain songs, stuff like that.
It's hard to try and get across those magical moments to people when you are explaining. So at work, I have to talk to patients a lot, and so trying to talk about what I'm doing on the weekend, and then going through the whole progress of what the SCA is and trying to explain it to them in a way that is interesting, but trying to maybe spark interest with them as well. Because it's really hard to put into words moments. I remember what was a festival where everybody stood and applauded the St. John's people, and it was just this beautiful moment. I was in tears. I think a lot of people felt quite emotional, and it was beautiful. But unless you were there, it's really hard to go, this is what you live for. Those moments where you see a friend get buffeted, or where they get offered, or where they're the first, female knight in our region. It's very hard to put into words. But yeah, the shine is always there in moments.
So is there a particular moment where that kind of immersiveness has really stuck with you as a favourite memory?
There's lots. There's so many. I remember my first festival. Just because it was the first time I had experienced the East Coast SCA and being so immersed into it. So this is 2020. I don't know if it was 2012 or 2011. No, I think the first Crown 20 was 2012, so that was my second. But I remember crying when we had to say goodbye, when we put our mundanes back on, and having to say goodbye to all these new friends I had made. But that first festival was just an eye-opener.
Yep.
It would have been before that, wouldn't it? Sorry, I'm just thinking, because I think I met you at my first festival, and that was 2007. No,
not 2012.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm way. I was not 2012. Got the years wrong.
2002, maybe.
2001 and 2002. Yeah, take 10 years off. It's still the 90s,
I
right?
specifically remembered that because, Griff was yelling at me about something, and I had no idea who he was, but you were there going, "Be nice to her."
That was so. I met Griff in 2004, I think. So, what was he being mean to you? Terrible.
Oh yeah, he was very drunk at the time. It was outside the tavern. It's fine. You were lovely though.
How about you, Lankin?
I have to admit, I've forgotten what the question was. Trying to think about what year it might have been. What was the question again?
Favorite inspirational moment.
Oh, inspirational moments. Oh, I mean, tried to attend every Knighting and Pelican and Laurel that I could. So they're all pretty damn, and mods getting made, pretty inspirational. I honestly can't think of a particular one. Like Vanessa said, there's so many.
So I have to ask, what are your family dinner conversations like? Is there a lot of shop talk, or do you try to avoid the SCA altogether as a over dinner conversation topic?
It's hard. It's hard to avoid shop talk because, you know, I met him in the SCA. You know, it's just that's our passion together that we share, which is nice. There are times that we probably don't want to hear about what the other person has to say, but that's like that with everything. But you know, there's a things that I know Griff and I had, because I had this very Western mindset of fighting and trying to evolve from that, whereas Griff did that beautifully, whereas for me it's still, you know, heater at this angle and sword right up here and telegraphing like anything. So there was times where it's just like, okay, there's some fight talk that I can't talk to Griff about, I've got to go somewhere else. And luckily I have a lot of supportive friends, and I can talk to you, Eva, or Engelin, or other male teachers. But yeah, there's sometimes fighting we couldn't see eye to eye, or I couldn't take criticism, or whatever. Just we'll go do our separate thing when it comes to fighting.
And what about with your mum when you see her? Because you at least are in the same order as well, so you have at least that advantage of you not going, well, there's a lot of things I can't talk to you about.
Yeah, no, Mum, I suppose it's talking about like sometimes the politics of things, or not even the politics. If there's something happening, it's me trying to, and I'm really bad at it, is actively listen, okay, and not try to fix, and tell her, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you saying this? What about this? And just, it's like, okay, all right, Mum, that sounds great. What about, yeah. I'm really bad at it. So sorry, Mum.
Lankin, do you guys, when you're
sorry, I had a bit of lag there, but
is it all SCA in your table?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to talk to my dad about it a fair bit on long car drives and stuff. With my wife, I mean, we've talked pretty much about. It has to be something relatively new, I guess, in the SCA to talk about. For us to really bring it up in general. We pretty much talked about it to death, I suppose. She likes it, but she probably wouldn't do it if it wasn't for me. Like, she enjoys the camping. She really, has some great friends there, and she enjoys the relaxing and stuff. But so there's not too much SCA talk for us.
I like the talk when you go, if we won lotto, this is what we would do. We buy a big ass block and, we create, toilet blocks and dorms and have our, own, and then we put this money towards that. Those conversations I really enjoy. Or if we would go make this tent for ourselves and, create all this beautiful heraldic stuff. And then it's just like, oh, that's right, we've got work. Okay. We'll do it another day.
Yeah, I mean, our discussion would probably be more along the lines of like, we'll buy 400 acres and be a working cattle stud, and on the side, in this corner paddock, we'll have that reserved for an SCA war or something once a year.
I think a lot of people have that dream of just that plot where you can have things.
Yeah, the bush block. Don't want to ruin the pasture.
So you've both brought third gen kids into the SCA. How are you finding it being on the other side of being a parent in the SCA compared to being a kid or just an adult without kids?
It's I can't comment too much just because COVID. So like Patrick's been to a few things, especially in the first year, like night school, and it's nice to take him. It's nice to get him dressed up, and there's plans to, make him a little, German lunch neck kind of outfit, and that's exciting. That's really exciting, and for him to see fighting, especially now that he's, a little person, not just a baby. But let's put a peg in it. Ask me again when we go back from all this COVID stuff.
Yeah, my answer would be much the same. I mean, I think Finn was about 3 months old, 2 months adjusted when I took him to a tournament they had in Melbourne, and then like a training war day the day before, and that'd be it. That'd be his total exposure to the SEA, because they haven't then COVID came in. I mean, he goes in my shed and he pulls I rattan daggers off the wall and hits things with them, but he hasn't really. Yeah, there's no real SEA exposure. I mean, even if there were events being held in Melbourne currently, I'm 2.5 hours drive from them, so that makes it pretty difficult with a babe.
Understandable. Do you have any advice for people on how to approach and nurture kids in the SEA? Because I think you have a sort of unique perspective as both parents and people who were children in the SCA. And I think that there's quite often a lot of talk, like I remember from when I was 12-year-old, people straight away going, you're going to be the future, and you're going to be the first female knight, and you're going to win a crown. And you, as a kid, you're like, yeah. And then as you become, at least my perspective, when I started to get into my teen years and early 20s, it started to actually weigh on me quite heavily. And I know that those sorts that can be pressure, or it can be good. So when you were coming up, what was something that helped you respond positively to the SCA, and what would you recommend to people trying to encourage kids?
Well, despite my dad being a Baron and Knight and Mum being a mod and a fighter previously, I wasn't ever pressured, I suppose. And I think if you have someone who's grown up in it, you're not really going to be able to pressure them into striving for a peerage or what have you. I think you're just going to have to let them leave if they want, and remember the things that they'll miss and come back for them. And I've seen that with several second geners, and I think it's going to be the same thing with any kids that have been brought in or brought up in the SEA. It's a pretty unique culture and experience, and they're most likely going to miss it and come back, even if it takes years and years and years. Yeah, I don't think you can push them.
If you love them, let them go.
Yeah. I think it's also finding someone, not to say that people don't have strong relationships with their parents, but I know finding people that I could not just hang out with, but that were positive role models that weren't my mum was really, really important. So there were times where I started hanging out with some of the older people and, becoming friends and just embracing whatever passions we had. So talking about fighting or dancing or something, but it wasn't necessarily with my mum. But Mum was always there to try and help and do whatever I needed or whatever direction I wanted to go. But finding those people that, you connect with or can share that passion with your child is quite helpful. But also you can't pressure. You find that spark that they have and try to water it, but you can't force it.
I think that's good advice. So, growing up, did you have any heroes that you looked up to and thought like they are, the hero of the SCA that since you've grown up, you've become friends with, but as a kid, you just idolized them?
It's like crowns are always like that mini celebrity. I know. Like being in Inyala, it was just we were so far away from everybody, and it just when the crown came, when the prince and princesses came, it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. These people, can't talk to them. You know, they're too important, kind of thing. But it's like Edward and Yolande when they came, and then you had Ragnar and Bliss when they reigned. Funny story, Mum and I, we got some whippets, we rescued some whippets, and we named them Magnus and Bliss because it's Ragnar Magnusson, and we called our dogs Magnus and Bliss after them. I've told him, he knows. But yeah, so there's quite a few of the royalty that would come over that now as an adult I've been, and moving over here, I've been privileged enough to get to know them, which is lovely. It's nice.
I guess for me as a child, look, I honestly didn't really pay much attention to who was in the throne at court. I remember one thing for me in my memory was I just thought it was Alpha for several years in a row. I didn't even realize it changed it for a while there.
It was, wasn't it?
I guess it was in a way, but no. So I had, particular fighters or whatever I thought were cool in particular, and they came and went. But no, I only really started paying attention to notable players when I was probably past the age of 18 and actually starting to fight proper and everything. Up until that point, I guess I had my clique of second gens. I mean, for me, most of my festivals under the age of 16 was basically just being in a roving gang of children. We'd wake up, scavenge some sort of breakfast and disappear until dinner time. And then when we were older, we'd disappear again after dinner time. So, no, I didn't really have any particular, heroes. But then obviously once I became an adult, I had lots of mentors and people I'd look up to in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, fanboy over anyone? Like none of the Americans or anything like that when they came over for festivals?
No, I remember people with American accents, being leading court and stuff, but I don't remember them particularly or anything like that. I remember one who came over often because he had a blonde girlfriend who was Australian. I knew that much, but I didn't know anything else. I didn't.
Porsche and Uber. Blonde girlfriend. I love that. I love that innocence, Lankin. That's great.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's that difference because you've just grown up with it from scratch, you weren't introduced to it as a fantasy world, that it was just your normal, and so Kings and Queens was your normal. So it's just someone else.
You talked about garb before. When I was a child, and same went for my brother, because my mum and dad were Baron and Baroness for so long. Back when they were Baron and Baroness, meetings had to be in garb. All the Baron and Baroness meetings were garbed events, even if they were just taking minutes. So since me and my brother were dragged along, we called garb meeting clothes. Me and my brother, we go and get in your meeting clothes, yay, and then we brush off. Yeah. So yeah, I guess since I grew up from the very start, it was all very casual for a long period. It's just what you did.
Did that ever get you in trouble when you went to school? Did people believe you when you were like, yeah, we went to the thing on the weekend and the king was there and that's just all normal? Semantic.
I don't remember it ever coming up. When I got to high school age, I think I dragged one or two people to a festival or two, but that was about it.
That's fair.
For Mirren's daughter, who was basically born into it, I think she had a moment at school where she said that, my mum and dad are the prince and princess, are a prince and princess, and I think there had to be a bit of a discussion. But she was quite, she was born into it too, so she was I think she was a bit like you, Lankin, where people were just people. This happened. It was just how it was. So.
Yep.
This is the way. Yes.
So, as peers, do you feel that the people who knew you as children have adjusted to you being responsible adults?
I think so. I don't think we would have been made peers if they hadn't accepted that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. You know, I think for me, coming over to Mornvale really, really helped because it gave the people who had grown up with me as a kid, you know, time to just have that break. I know a few of them still see me as a kid and do, you know, are in a bit of disbelief sometimes, but it's all in jest. It's all fun and games. But yeah, it wasn't until I came to Mornvale where it's like these people don't know me; they just know me as an adult, that was lovely.
So, I was going to ask, do you have a proud moment that isn't period, not your peerages, but a proud moment in the SCA that you can look back on?
I've got one that's kind of a funny story as well, I suppose. There was it was one of the most recent festivals, and all the kids were gathered to do the attacking the knights thing. Even though I wasn't a knight yet, I'd always go to those things anyway. Often Alpha would sub me in, or I'd just go anyway. And I remember that they decided that there was basically the knights were defending the fort, and the kids were all going to storm the fort, and they decided that they were going to have a secondary attacking force that was made up of the Mouse Guard. So the Duchess, who was leading them, summoned all the Mouse Guard to separate off and form this second attacking force. And so me and Sir Rufus, who were both in the fort with the knights, went, "Oh, okay, cool." So we got up and we walked out and we joined the secondary attacking force with all the under 12s. And it was pretty funny because we're standing there next to them, and one of the kids is like, "You're not Mouse Guards. You're too old." And Rufus is like, "I am a Mouse Guard," and I was like, "I'm a Mouse Guard too. I've even got my pouch still." Rufus is disintegrated years ago, and they just didn't believe us. They didn't believe us. So as soon as Leon was called, they just butchered us and then walked off.
Yeah, they would have done that. Every time I fought with them, we've been able to reign. Those kids, most of them are okay, but then there's always the one that gives you side eye, saddles up right next to you, waits for Leon, and then just pummels you, and you're like, "I'm on your side." They just love hitting anyone over 4 feet tall.
Fair. That's gorgeous. That's funny. Proud moment. Oh shit. Oh, excuse. Yeah. I suppose we're getting through things like stewarding events like Spring War and being able to get through some of those. Like there was, I think, 2012. Okay, I know I said 2012 before, but this is definitely 2012. Master Bacchus and I ran Spring War, and it was a terrible year. There was so much rain. It was torrential. And people were getting bogged, and it was awful. But we got through it, we survived. So that's kind of nice. So moments like that where you get through an event, either it goes off swimmingly or you jump those hurdles. You just keep on going. Those are good.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite piece of advice that's been given to you throughout your life?
There's more than one way to skin a cat. I know, sorry, awful. Mum would always say that. There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one viewpoint on something. If something's not working, try a different way. There's options. listen to people. It doesn't always have to be your own way.
Yeah. Like I have lots of sayings I like. I haven't really got any that particularly pertain to the SCA. I mean, I do like, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. But it's not really anything to do with the SCA. I just think that's a great one for life.
I've never heard that before.
Really? Stanty just said, yes, Stanty, that was the best spring war ever because there was a dog. Yes. We planned that just for you. Yes. We planted a dog.
Was someone asking about the Stormhold chess challenge, were they? Or
No, Stanty's commenting. Yeah, you're welcome. Sorry, Lankin.
That's right.
I had a question. I've just totally lost it. All right. I remember. So, how have households influenced your experience in the SCA and how you've kind of grown into them as an adult away from your family?
You go, Lankin. You go.
Okay. Obviously, I was in my dad's household for most of my life, and I think what we were talking about before in terms of like encouraging second geners and stuff, I think a good rule of thumb would probably be to never squire your own son or daughter or whatnot. Probably the same as I wouldn't squire my wife or anything like that. But obviously my dad's household was pretty great, but it pretty much disintegrated by the time I'd gotten older. So obviously I did most of my adult fighting life in Attica, and I'm still pretty much Attica, and that was good. Basically, as soon as I was squired and I became in Attica, I moved away to rural Queensland, and I stayed there ever since. Now I'm in rural Victoria. So, look, it didn't really push me in terms of giving me someone to regularly practice against, but it does give you a team, I suppose, to work around and to talk to. So, yeah, sorry, I could probably describe it better, but yeah, it was just not. It's having a household is really nice. It's great supportive, even if it's not directly training you or something like that.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to work on a common goal, or have that sounding board.
Sounding board, yeah.
For whatever reason, it could be mundane, it could be SCA, it could be whatever, but it's I think I was in a few households with mum growing up, but I felt almost like we had our thumbs in every. Oh no, that's a bad analogy. We kind of almost sampled all of them, or we got to hang out with everybody, we got to experience everybody. I was, as Mirren's protege, I was in Hawk's Tower, and we were trying to aim towards specific goals and have let's do this heraldic thing, let's do this garb thing, let's do this event thing, and that was fantastic. That was really, really good. And then as I think as a liveryman for Gabs as well, getting to experience that was excellent. So being in a royal household, that experience I think that changed my game as well, made me want to up it a little bit, wanted me to play more. But it's just nice to have that support.
I think as a second gen, you can kind of go anywhere and kind of almost get that household experience in some ways. Obviously I went up to Brisbane and I was very, very much accepted by Bane and Henri and Rufus, and basically I was within their household in effect for Great North War events like that.
Yeah, you're in the household, but you're not in the household. It's nice. Yeah, I agree.
That's sweet.
Now, Did you have a angsty, rebellious teen stage that led into your SCA at all?
No, I think I was a pretty good teen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a pretty good. Like I had that one. I think it was about 1 year. Mum will probably say it wasn't. She'll probably say it was more. Where I would go to SCA events, but I'd sit there moody and just didn't want to be there like that. So, but Mum can probably shed some light on that.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably the age where I would have or could have been that. That was my mum and my brother weren't going to events, so it was pretty much me and Dad would rock up to like say festival, and we'd only see each other for meals, if that. So I don't think I really had I don't think any of my angsty teenage phase bled into SCA. No. Yeah, I didn't take a gap year from SCA kind of stuff or anything. Yeah.
I love that gap year.
Well, ask is because I think when I hit about 16 or 17, I definitely realized what I wanted to do with persona and name and stuff, and it was completely different to my parents, who did play in the SCA shortly before I came with them, so it was more their thing when I first started. And I was like, I don't like Italian stuff, I'm gonna do German stuff, and then changed everything, and it was a point of contention for 2 years.
Wow, so it's like liking different sports teams in the same household. Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't have to go through that. But I'm very happy for you.
Yeah, no.
It's pretty casual.
I love that you did though. I think that's fantastic. Well, possibly not when you're going through it, but to reminisce.
It just makes me feel like it's so normal to know that was the worst thing that I ever did, was decided that I didn't want to have a persona my parents liked.
Did you all pick your own SCA names, or were you given them?
Good question. I didn't even know I had an SCA name that wasn't Harry for a long time, until I found one of my old memberships cards or something. So apparently I was Harry Swordsman for a lot of the years when they would still have memberships for children, but I wasn't even really aware of it, and I don't know if anyone else was. Now my brother's was better. I can't remember if this was his official one to start with or if it became it, but my brother was James One Shoe. He was James regular, but he was James One Shoe because this is a great story, because at the original festival sites were pit latrines, so they weren't any portaloos or anything like that. And so I guess there were two contributing things that made him James One Shoes. One, that when he was a toddler, he was small enough to walk around, but also still young enough that he would a gumboot would fall off and he wouldn't notice for several hundred meters until he discovered an adult and was like, I've lost my shoe, and then people would have to do an emu bob. But the other thing was that when he was a bit older, but he once, for whatever reason, took off his shoes to go to the bathroom and lost one down the latrine. So he was James One Shoe for a while. I can't really remember if anyone else called him that except my parents and myself. But no, I didn't really have an SCA name for ages.
So I wish he stayed in the SCA.
I think I only chose Lankin when I was about 16.
Why did you choose Lankin? Oh, lag.
What made you choose Lankin as a name?
Lankin. I ripped Lankin off. Have you heard of the band Steel Eye Span? Pre-internet, the SCA didn't have many influences for music, so Steel Eye Span was a folk rock band from England. So they used to sing Long Lankin and Gaudete and stuff. Anyway, Long Lankin is one of the songs. It's about a murderer called Lankin who doesn't get paid, so he murders the family or something like that while the husband's away. And I just liked the name Lankin. So that's where I got Lankin from. And Ealdwulf I pulled out of a book on werewolf lore and fiction. It's a name of several bishops and one or two kings, but it means the old wolf. So, yeah, I just figured I'll be old one day. And the young wolf didn't sound great, the way it read. So.
I like that. My name, so I was Marina for ages, and then I chose Nissa. I can't remember the surname, I have no idea. But Nissa I couldn't document. So I searched and searched for something that was similar so people could keep on calling me Niss, and found Fenissa, which was Finnish, 14th century, I think, Finnish. And I was like, perfect. I don't care if people don't call me Fenissa, they can call me Niss. It's great. So that was it. And then surname, I think Griff and I were at Rhiannon's house and we were trying to find names and trying to document them. And there was this Viking called Eric Fatface. And because I'm a chubby round faced person, we went with Æriksdotter. So it's not my proudest shining moment, but we thought it was funny at the time, and I just stuck with it.
It's perfect.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I have tried to register my name. Paddy's helped me a lot with that because Lankin is like 15th century or something Irish, and Ealdwulf is like 11th century Saxon. So he's made a very admirable attempt to like make something work. So yeah.
How about you, Eva? Did you choose your name?
Yeah, I did. I chose my name just after my rebellious period. So I think I searched through the Academy St. Gabriel website at like 15th century German women's names, and I was like, Eva, I like that. And then I, for ages, just saw that they're like in Germany, they were doing locative names. So that's where the von is essentially from. So you're from wherever. And I'd been looking around for a while. I couldn't decide what I wanted. And then there is a German swordmaster, Peter von Danzig, and Danzig is Gdansk in Poland. And it's a little bit of a weird tie-in, but I had a really weird childhood. And when I was very, very little, my parents were goth rockers, and they took me to see the band Danzig like 20 times. Like they literally followed them on tour. And so I saw them and like met the band when I was a little kid. There's a heap of photos of me like in the band t-shirts with little leather jackets. So it was a big part of my childhood. And I was like, Eva von Danzig. Danzig is in Poland. Poland was part of the German Empire in the 15th, 16th century. I was like, sick, that's perfect. It sounds badass. I'll go with that.
It was kismet, you know, you grew up with Danzig and then, you know, you saw that and it was just like, oh, yeah.
I brought it full circle, baby.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. How did your parents feel, though?
Not good. I think by that time they stopped caring so much and they were okay with it.
Okay.
My dad was probably a little proud, I think.
Okay. Love it.
Cute.
I have to ask you, Engelin, as well. You did get to pick your name, but, you know, where did it come from? I'm always interested to know how people choose their SCA name.
Oh, exactly the same as you. I searched the St. Gabriel website for 14th century German names, and it was there. I went, okay. Basically, I did have like the people I started the SCA with. I started with a name called like Niche or something, and then I hated it and changed it. But my surname Teufel is devil, and Engelin means angel, and I'm like, that's nice, that's cool. But
nice.
I don't.
Cool.
Yeah, I have no particular story or tie to it. If I actually want to take it back to my kind of early period persona, the closest I can get to is Engelberger. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So
I feel pretty good. I think it's solid. Yeah.
There you go.
Go for it. Queen Engelberger.
I think Engelin's like a nickname version, so it could work. Yeah. Anyway, so we've reached our hour. It's gone very fast. I've had a lot of fun. Yeah, believe it or not. But before we finish up, I'd love to hear the no shit there I was story. Or favorite campfire story, whatever you want to call it.
It's of no significance to anyone else, but for me, it's one of my favourite stories because it was my first festival war, and I was a combat archer. So there was 2 incidences in this specific hill battle on the first day, and one was we were shooting and everything, and I shot my friend who was on my side, so Conan, in the back, and he took it. And I just, even though there's all these archers, I kind of I went, oh my god, he's gonna know it was me. He didn't know it was me. Because they had just pulled a hold as well, so he kind of walked off, pissed off that he got shot. But I felt that he knew it was me, and I stewed about it for so long. And I told him, I'm so sorry. He didn't know it was me. Same war. So there was a stick in the ground, like a pole, and then there was Sir Alpha behind him. Now, this stick was really quite insignificant compared to Alpha being the, cuddly person that he is. And I shot the stick. That's how fantastic a shot I was. I shot the stick instead of shooting Alpha, who was behind it. So that was no significance to other people, but it's my favourite war stories because I was just that bad.
You did shoot somebody, though, and that's what counts.
Yeah, but it was my own team, man. Doesn't count.
It happens.
Yeah. Lankin, you, no shit, there I was. Oh, is he lagged?
I think we got some lag.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Lankin?
No.
He'd have good stories, right?
He should have a good story. It's coming. Now he's building the anticipation.
Eva, do you have a story while we're waiting?
I can. Nobody's going to know particularly who this is, so it works really well. But last time Felix and I had the opportunity to go to an event in West Kingdom, we went to West Antier War. So it's, inter-kingdom, but it's always really well fought. Like those 2 kingdoms get along so well that it's always there's always a really good feel. But it was the first time that I think I got to fight with an actual built fort with a turret and gates that you could fight through and open. It was really cool. And like a couple of things that happened they didn't realize is they play terrain as it lays. So they did a knights battle versus all known comers. And for one, the knights didn't have any archers or projectiles except for one crossbowman. And so we're getting hammered with like throwing axes and stuff that's coming at us from all sides everywhere else. And they have a rule that basically is if it's safe to do so, you can take your hand out of your sword, pick up throwing axes and chuck them back. And so so Rorik, who was the Western commander we were fighting with the West, was like, don't throw them back, just leave them. And then there's Duke Miles, who's the current king of the West now. He looked so annoyed. I was watching him like hardcore pace back and forth, just picking up throwing axes and chucking them back, flinging them at whoever flung them at us. And I thought that was hilarious. And then all of a sudden, there's like a dude who's they've literally hoisted him over the wall. And then he like saddles up next to the wall like I can't see him. I'm like, where the fuck did he come from? They're like, oh, they're allowed to do that. And I'm like, what? And I also tried to hold the fort closed when there was like 10 dudes that were twice my size over the top of me also holding the gates. And so it was a learning curve. But my favorite part of that war was that when we finally went kingdom versus kingdom, the Western Army is outside, and they had a rule that basically we're not going to break through the gates. We have a ballista. The ballista has to shoot the gates twice, and then we can enter. And we were all briefed that that was the rule. And then the commander goes, we're going to hold back and let the ballista do its job, and then we will approach when the gates are open. Everyone was like, cool, great, lay on is called. And it was the first opportunity that I'd had as a knight to fight with my knight and my grand knight. So we have 3 generations of knights there. And my grand knight, Sir Colin, literally waits 2 minutes and then gets bored and shouts at everyone, what do you want to live forever? And like hightails it to the gate. He's got a longsword, shoves it in the gate, levers it open, and gets inside by himself. And then the rest of us are standing back going, you can't do that. And the commander has just gone, don't do what he did.
I love that. That's great. I can see Berengar doing something like that.
What do you want to live for?
Yeah. That's beautiful. What a moment. I love that.
Lankin, you're back. You have to tell us your no shit story.
But I've told a couple of the funny ones already. Trying to think. I mean, probably one of my favorite kind of bits was when I was only I think I was only 17, turning 18. Back when my armor was really quite crappy, and I was using a poleaxe only like as tall as myself. I remember going to a tournament with Sir Cornelius was at, and I just did 3 bouts with Sir Cornelius, not even within the tournament. But I remember we started off, and like I was really young, and Leon was called, and I one-shotted him, just bang in the faceplate, and then I could see that he kind of went, oh, okay. And so we reset, and on the second out of 3, I did exactly the same thing. I also one-shotted him in the faceplate, just from a slightly different angle. And I wasn't feeling cocky or anything, but I was like pretty happy with myself. And then I think that's when he must have like squared his shoulders and been like, right. So then he tore me to pieces for like the 3rd one. I think he took off my legs and then my arms and then killed me. That was pretty funny. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. There's so many. I guess there was a bridge battle where I ended up being the last person surviving on my side, again with a poleaxe, so a short pole arm, and so they went to single combat, and the first guy jumped me and grabbed my pole arm to try and wrestle it off me, and I was carrying a sidearm, so I just daggered him in the face, and the second person did the same, so I daggered him in the face, and then the third one grabbed it and died with it, so I was just stranded with the dagger, and then a greatsword guy came out and didn't give me an opportunity to grapple. So what's sorry, Jody? Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Loki, I had a great moment with Loki where I was telling him about how no one had ever taken my own dagger and killed me with it, and then he did shortly afterwards. That was pretty good. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, guys, so much for joining us tonight. I've had a blast getting to know you and your stories a little bit better, and it's been fantastic. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, very much so.
It's been fun. It's been nice to see humans again.
I don't know about humans, but yeah. Cool.
Thank you so much again for joining us, and I hope everyone has an amazing holiday season. I think we do have some plans in the pipelines for next week that will be announced shortly, but until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you soon.
Alrighty.
Bye-bye.